So next up, and not for the first time, a spotlight presentation. We have Amber Rangel, our VP and Director of Workforce Development, who will give this month's spotlight presentation.
Thank you. Glad to be back. Obviously, there's a lot of interest in workforce development, which is why I'm here again. Happy to give an update. Our office was founded with some key priorities: industry-driven workforce development, making sure that industry is at the table and very participatory in any of the training programs that we're funding. The strategic focus on good jobs in the state's high-growth industry sectors has a definition that was built on the Georgetown University's Center on Education and the Workforce and the Center for American Progress's Good Jobs definitions. We define that as skilled jobs that minimally pay a living wage for workers and support themselves in the modern economy, allow for career and salary growth, provide economic security, and remove the need for public assistance. This requirement is something that we really doubled down on. We really are focused on living wage work that has the pathway for family-sustaining wages. And that is the case in the state's high-growth industry sectors that we're focused on. The other kind of dual mandate, in addition to being industry-driven workforce development for good jobs, is serving historically marginalized communities. The way that we're able to do that is through wraparound services, childcare, transportation, participant stipends, actually paid training. We found that free training isn't enough anymore. If you're already working multiple low-wage jobs, you don't have the time to take off to get reskilled. So paid training is actually quite important. And improved data collection and impact tracking across programs is also very important to the legislature, to the governor, and so we're really happy to be able to start collecting data on all the programs that we're funding and be able to report. We had an initial first-year report back out in April, and last year we had the legislature passed a requirement for our annual reporting. So our first annual report required by the legislature is due in February. So while we have had 4 rounds of funding out the door, we have just a smaller portion of that who have data to show and outcomes that we'll be able to report in February 1. That'll be due. So we're working on that now with our team.
Is there an income limit on the paid training? Is it based on income or just anybody's interest in being retrained?
It depends per program, but there's, it's generally not an income limit. Some of the office's core functions that we established in our last round, in our annual report, was to drive innovative, high-impact workforce programming through our grants, establish strategic priorities for workforce investment, that's the target industries and the target occupations, and then connecting the dots across the region's industries and agencies, working with the regional economic development councils and local stakeholders and across the state agencies with SUNY, CUNY, DOL, and others. Kevin, you asked for some other workforce development programs at ESD. So there's here, the regional council has the capital funds. There's the New York Entertainment Workforce Diversity Grant Program. And there's the Reimagine Workforce Preparation Grant Program, which is, that's, if you're asking, that's a federally funded program. And then we have the tax incentive. These are not run by our office, but these are just some of the other items that cover workforce development at ESD. Of the $350 million investment that the governor made in the 23 budget, our office is just a slice of that, $150 million, and this is just an overview of some of that other funding. One thing that our office is also tasked to do is track data and outcomes for all of these programs. So my data metrics manager, Kimberly Schultz, is here. She's been working with across the agencies to collect this data. Many of these programs are just getting up and running, but this is also something that our office is tasked to do. No small feat.
If you could send that chart to me, that's the one I usually get confused on.
Yep.
Because I always was confused as to what Department of Labor did and what we did. And as you said, we seem to do a good majority. And historically, we weren't always doing workforce training. It was historically in labor, right?
Yep.
Now we're doing a lot of it. And I didn't realize so many other state agencies who are doing components of it, do they take lessons from us because we're doing good, or do we exchange?
So one thing, we have a really great relationship with the Department of Labor that we're really proud of, and the Department of Health and SUNY and CUNY. And we're trying to help folks understand this is where we're operating, this is where DOL is, so I mentioned the wage threshold. DOL doesn't have a wage threshold. Like there's a high demand for low wage work in our economy. That's just the reality. DOL programs are going to continue to support that, and we can work with them on that as well. And so they're not quite taking notes from us, but they understand where our lane is here, and we work with them when we can. But the Department of Health, so I will note here, because my next slide is the statewide high growth target industries. The Department of Health has significant funding, as you can see, for healthcare. So healthcare is not a priority in our funding because the governor's already designated a significant amount of funding to the Department of Health for healthcare programs.
Got it.
And SUNY also has, SUNY and CUNY also have healthcare-related programs as well. Our target industries align with ESD's priorities: advanced manufacturing materials, biotech and life science, clean tech and renewable energy. Construction is one that isn't, is a captive industry, is not something that ESD focuses on attracting, but it obviously serves all of ESD's investments in economic development and has a shortage of workers. And electronics, optics, photonics, and imaging, that's where the semiconductor industry is. So we've made many investments in that area, as well as film and television and software and digital media. Many of our projects in New York City actually are software and digital media focused. So two grant programs. One is the capital grant, $35 million for awards from $100,000 to $3 million. To date, we've given out $11 million to 11 projects, over $11 million to 11 projects. One thing that is different, and we talked to a lot of the regional councils about this funding, is we'll award up to 50% of these projects up to $3 million. The regional councils don't have an upper threshold on capital projects. They do have, their percentage is lower though, it's at 20%. So we do talk to people inquiring about capital projects, whether REDC funding is best or our funding is best. So that's a conversation that we're always happy to have with them and make sure they understand.
Can we layer them, or they can't,
So we're not, ESD, we could, although we're not looking to fund more than 50% of a capital project, right?
Got it.
So it'd have to be a very large capital project that would have both funding from our office and the regional councils. The operating grant is the bulk of the awards and funding that's out the door to date. We can cover up to 75% of total project costs, and these are the grants that cover the curriculum development, the trainers, the wraparound services, job placement services, the training itself, and the stipends. The operating grants are up to $1 million, and I'll say we have, over $2 million or $23 million has been awarded to 38 projects, but these projects range from $50,000, from $52,000 to $1 million. So there really is a need in that couple $100,000 range as well that can have a really good impact. And the Capacity Building Award is a data and metrics-driven award for successful existing programs to help them expand capacity on projects that we want to see grow. There are also some carve-outs in this funding stream. There's $5 million for SUNY and CUNY mental health programs. There was $5 million for the REDCs and $10 million for New York State Youth Build programs, which we have funded to date. The Youth Build programs, we work closely with their organization. This is a construction program for at-risk youth, and they're aware of our funding stream, and they advocated for it to be in the budget. So we work with them to get other programs. There's about 18 across the state, so we'll be funding more of those in the future as well. These are some of the baseline metrics that we've been collecting: enrollment and completion rates, job placement rates, and tracking. There are some voluntary data such as demographics, which we do feel are very important. and the placement rates and the retention rates over longer terms are more challenging to collect, as keeping track of people after they've left your training and placed in jobs is a little more challenging. But this is another reason why we're working closely with the Department of Labor. We're using their one-stop operating system, their data system, for tracking. So we have a secure system where our grantees can track individual outcomes for their participants. So that's one way that we're partnering with DOL. To date, as I mentioned, we've awarded over $36 million through 53 grants that actually go to 41 programs. We have a handful of programs that we're funding both capital and operating grants for the same program. So that's why we have 41 programs, but 53 actual grants. This is training over 11,000 New Yorkers, partnering with over 400 businesses. We're really excited about some of these projects, and I'll just flip through quickly some of the projects by regions, and I'll just highlight a few of them. In Central New York, I'll kind of speak to the bulk of the ones in Central New York are what we're calling Micron adjacent. So before we got any funds out the door for the investment that we set aside for Micron, our office was already getting applications for programs that knew that they were going to have to scale up. So Syracuse Build is one of those, which is a construction program. It's a pre-apprenticeship program that gets historically marginalized communities prepared to enter the DOL registered apprenticeship in the construction space. So that's one that we're really excited to help scale and grow, because the unions in the Central New York need to practically double their workforce in the next 10 years. A couple on Long Island, you mentioned, Commissioner Early mentioned the investment in Suffolk County that was just recently announced with the offshore wind. We're also investing in a adjacent project for advanced manufacturing. The Suffolk County Department of Labor has a $5 million award through the U.S. Navy to rebuild their submarine fleet. They identified that the workforce pipeline for the industrial-based suppliers, there was a huge shortage. So they're directing $5 million for training purposes, and we're funding wraparound services and some capital projects for that. So that's a project that we're really excited about.
Right. In the beginning, I was also getting confused because with the governor's big push for offshore wind, every time we see acronyms for that, it's OSW. And then your department is OSWD. I keep on thinking.
I brought that up so the office was named when I started. I brought that up. I said, just so everybody knows, like OSW is offshore wind.
So you're OSWD.
Yes.
Right. And then with OSWD's assistance for OSW companies,
yep.
Are we also partnering with NYSERDA, and aren't some of the wind companies themselves providing pots of money for additional workforce training?
They are. So we
does that leverage our money?
Yeah. So actually, I didn't mention this earlier. Our funds are not for companies directly. They're for training and education providers. So really focusing on regional and sector-based strategies. So we could be funding projects that NYSERDA is also funding. I believe United Way of Long Island is an example that they're also funding. I have to double check, but there are some projects that we have funded that are also getting NYSERDA funding. We have a great relationship with NYSERDA. I'm on the phone with them making sure that our budgets don't overlap, so we want to clearly understand what NYSERDA is funding and what ESD is funding, and making sure that they're not getting,
So we're agnostic as to who we're training. We're not training for specific companies, but NYSERDA might be partnering directly with the companies
yes.
who received awards to build the projects.
Yep.
Got it.
Yep. As I mentioned, a lot of the projects in New York City are, IT-based. When you talk about living wages in New York, that's around $25. So to get someone with a certification without a degree, the quickest pathway is generally IT. So we're excited to have so many great programs and projects in New York City for the tech field as well. I will just say that the Western New York projects was this bulk of Western New York projects were part of the Western New York Coalition, co-led by the regional office and some regional stakeholders, leveraging a large amount of private foundation funding through the Wilson Foundation. So that's one of the reasons I feel like I need to explain why there's such a large number of Western New York projects for the region. Our one-year progress report that was released in April is available on our website and via the QR code here. But we're really excited as we grow our team the year ahead, establishing a resource hub of best practices on our website, continuing to coordinate with other agencies and report on data, and also work closely with the REDCs and regional stakeholders. We're going to be, basically traveling around the state, meeting with regional stakeholders, trying to identify existing shortages. We've been taking a lot of incoming applications for funding. We know that we're asking people to do things differently, right? We're asking for businesses to be more at the table. We're asking them to serve maybe populations that they haven't before, to partnering with with nonprofit organizations and social services organizations, maybe something new for some training and education providers. So we know that there's a lot of more of that work that needs to be done on the ground. So our team will be traveling across the state to do that in the coming year. So we're excited about that work. All of our information's online. We have another deadline coming up December 29th, and hopefully we'll have a couple more awards out in the coming months as well. Any questions? Good.
All right, well, Amber, another terrific presentation, very informative and educational. I know we can't believe everything we read in the paper. We all know that. I saw an article about 2 weeks ago that, I don't know, maybe you and Hope were before a legislative hearing and somebody was raising some issues. Were they, was the article, one, accurate, or two, if any issues were raised, are we taking steps to address the concerns that may have been raised by the legislator?
Well, I think the legislation.
Or am I mixing up?
No, I think what you're referring to, I had a hearing that was focused on workforce development, and there was this notion that we weren't getting the money out fast enough. But we just launched the office a year ago, and we've had many rounds of funding, and the funding that was provided for us was for a 5-year period. So we've got a lot of runway to.
Got it.
So 36 million out of 150, I think we're right on target.
Right.
And I will say, I'll say it again.
Oh, if you looked at like a 5-year spread.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
So we're asking people to do things differently,
That's
right?
right.
So we've been taking a lot of incoming. We're funding, a lot of the stuff that's already on the shelf, but there's more that needs to be developed. We need to be working with community partners, with training and education providers, and industry across the state. So for stuff that's kind of on the shelf, I feel like we've funded a lot of it, and we're going to continue to work across the state. But I do believe that we're on target, and we are following up with the legislature to have more detailed conversations about what we're doing.
Great to know. Thanks for the clarification. I'm a believer. I've served on many boards, and I always direct staff, don't rush. There's always people who want you to go fast. I'd rather us take our time and do it right than do it quickly and then have Monday morning quarterbacks and second guessers saying, no, you screwed this up or you messed that up. So it sounds like you guys are doing exactly the right thing. And so thanks for the update. Anybody else have any questions for Amber? We're going to see you a couple more times throughout the agenda, I think.
Oh, yes.
So good job, Amber. Thank you very much.